Good morning, students of class 5. Welcome to English class. We are reading chapter 7, Demosthenes. In our last class, we came to know that as a boy, Demosthenes was shy and he stammered and stuttered. His father was a wealthy sword maker, but he passed away very soon when he was 7 years old. After his father's death, Demosthenes was in charge of his guardians who were not careful with his money, and they could not even give him proper education. This made him angry and he wanted to do something about it. Today we are going to read next what happened next. Athens then had some great orators. Demosthenes had often heard his teachers talk about them, and he longed to listen to their public speeches. One day, not long after, he heard that Callistratus, an orator who everyone admired, was to speak at a great trial that was taking place in the city. Demosthenes heard people talk about Callistratus and begged his tutor to allow him to be in the courtroom when he spoke. The tutor agreed and even arranged a seat from where Demosthenes could see and hear all that went on. The speech that Callistratus delivered was full of power and purpose. What does that mean? That means the speech had a clear message and had a great impression on people's mind who were listening it. Demosthenes too was impressed and inspired. And he said to himself, I too will be an orator and make people think about what I am saying. I want to have the power of words to make people agree with me and believe me. In his heart, he also thought, maybe this special talent will also help me fight against the injustice my guardians have done to me. Remember, he was not at all happy with his guardians and he wanted to do something about it. So, this was something he decided to do, that he will learn how to speak. He wanted to have this power of speech, but he knew that he must work hard to succeed. And for the next 2 years, he read history, he wrote speeches, and listened to famous orators. When he was 18, he believed he was ready to speak in public. He decided to fight against his guardians in a court of law. At first, no one took him seriously, but Demosthenes pleaded his case again and again. That means he argued in the court of law to prove that his guardians had been unfair to him. You know what happened then? In the end, he won, and his guardians were ordered by the court to return his money to him. Remember that story of King Bruce and the spider? The spider too tried again and again, and finally it won. Similarly, over here too, Demosthenes did not leave the fighting or the argument at the very first failure. He too argued again and again, and finally he won. But it was too late, as there was very little money left to recover. Once more Demosthenes failed, great sadness and anger. But he would not give up and went on to speak in the assembly of Athens. His first address was a failure. He knew it from the faces of the people around him and was filled with shame. He thought, "This is surely the last time I speak in public." Then he left the assembly and walked down slowly on the road without realizing where he was going. He was so sad that he didn't care where he was going. Suddenly, he felt someone touch his arm. It was an old man who had heard him speak in the assembly. He had seen how sad and disappointed Demosthenes was. He looked at him keenly and praised him. He told him that his speech reminded him of the great orator Pericles. You know who Pericles was? Pericles was a famous Greek orator and an experienced, highly respected political leader. Now, this old man who followed Demosthenes, he told him that Demosthenes' speech reminded him of Pericles. He also told, "How can you give up so easily, Demosthenes?" So these words were encouraging for Demosthenes. This inspired him again to carry on with his wish to be a great orator or to be a great speaker. So Demosthenes felt encouraged and tried again. But he failed a second time, and this time he left the assembly hiding his face in his cloak. As you can see in this, Demosthenes was so filled with shame, and he was sad too, that he left that place hiding his face in his cloak, as you can see in this picture. An actor named Satyrus, who knew him well, followed him. He knew that Demosthenes would be in despair, so he went behind him. Demosthenes did not hide his feelings from him. He said, "A sailor with a foolish story will make them applaud, while if I tell them tales of the glorious deeds of their own countrymen, they don't care." To this, Satyrus answered, "True, Demosthenes, but I'll tell you why it is so, if you will recite to me some lines from one of our great poets." Then Demosthenes recited some poems to him. He spoke the words correctly, but his voice was dull. When he finished, Satyrus repeated the lines back to him, listening to which Demosthenes was very much surprised. You know why? Because he could not believe that they were the same lines. As when the actor spoke it or delivered those lines, his eyes flashed, his voice rose and fell, and his body swayed as he spoke. And it was then Demosthenes realized that why his speeches did not interest the Athenians or the people. He realized that he must not read or recite them, but he should also act them. And from that day on, Demosthenes began to work hard, but in a different way. How? He converted one of his sailors of his house into a study. There he practiced without any disturbance. He often lived in that study for 2 or 3 months at a stretch. He even went to the seashore and shouted his speech with pebbles in his mouth. It made him struggle to bring out every sound. He practiced speaking as he walked and ran along the seashore. He raised his voice so that he could be heard over the roaring waves. He also practiced speaking as he ran up a hill. All this strained his breath voice, and tone. And finally, after hard work, Demosthenes' speech was filled with drama and purpose. That is, his speeches had a strong effect on those who listened to him. And he was no longer the boy who was shy and delicate, who spoke with a stammer. And he went on to be a great orator, one of the best in Athens. So that was a very inspiring story of Demosthenes. What message this story gives to us? That we should not live trying before we achieve our goal. We should always keep on trying. And these qualities like perseverance, tenacity, hard work will definitely lead us to our goal, the success. So that was all for today. If you have any difficulty understanding this story, you will send your query in the mail ID given over here. Thank you.